All right, so welcome back to Georgia Peachcast. Today is May 13th, and we are coming to you live and then recorded from Cherokee County, Georgia. This is Greg.
And this is Will.
So tonight we thought we'd discuss immigration issues. And so to help us understand this,
We thought we'd introduce our friend, a immigration. I'm losing my words here.
advocate.
She is an immigration advocate and activist. This is Ludi, and we wanted to talk to her about the topic of immigration, which has become rather. It's become really important, especially this year.
And, I agree with you on that. It's like a political football that just won't go away. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here and yeah, looking forward to having a hopefully informative conversation.
well, I can guarantee you that you're going to educate me about a few things. That's for sure.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
And of course, immigration is top of the menu item for Republicans all the time. But it's important for all of us because I think people forget about how important immigration is for us.
Yeah.
So tell our listeners about yourself.
Yeah.
What's your story and why do you care about this moment in history? Well, some might say this dire moment in history that we're all sharing.
Definitely, of course. So I think first of all, I definitely want to make sure to highlight that I am not an immigration lawyer. So I definitely everything that I'm going to share today is, like you said, my story and just stories of family and people that I've talked to out there while I've been canvassing in the recent months. So I just want to make sure of that. So I'm no expert, but I definitely can give you my opinion and my experience. So I was born in Mexico City. And when I was about 8 years old, my dad got a job in California. And luckily, that because he got a job, he was sponsored for a visa, and the whole family was sponsored. So we were able to come here, just pretty much easily, just fly here. And then we had stability. And of course, we had protection because once we got our green card, everything just was kind of normal. And of course, now I'm a citizen. We're all citizens. And the one thing that I have noticed is that compared to myself and other families that came here in very different ways, we've had very different experiences. They've dealt a lot with a lot more challenges. And of course, right now, especially with this administration, there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen. So in my family, just to throw out a term, we're what's called a mixed status family.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, what that means is, like I said, I'm a citizen. I have family members that are permanent residents, some that are DACA holders, some have non-permanent resident visas,
Okay.
and that's usually for like asylum.
Okay.
It could be different ones, but that's an example of asylum.
No, thank you for sharing that because a lot of things that people don't understand about immigration are the different statuses.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, definitely.
So, if you don't mind me asking, what is DACA?
Oh, yes, definitely. Thank you for bringing that up. So DACA is actually that was given to children who arrived here to the U.S. prior to 2021, and I might have that year wrong, but that came here when they were young. They had to have been under the age of 15.
Okay.
So they were seen as their parents brought them. It really wasn't their fault. They had no choice. They were brought here. So because they got here so young, they went to school here. Then they were giving this special permission called DACA. And I don't know the official word. I'll try to look it up right now so we can bring it up. But it's mostly known as DACA. And because of that, they're able to go to school and they're able to work here. However, there is no pathway to citizenship with DACA. So they're kind of just stuck in a limbo. So
purgatory.
sort of, yeah.
Okay.
I can look that up.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and so and that, like I said before, yeah, a lot, even me, and I'm not perfectly educated about immigration, but I seem to know more than a lot of the people I run into, and that's because I'm a political junkie, or I've turned into one since this defecant dilemma started back in 16, and it is confusing because people hear phrases like DACA and what's the other one? I can't remember what it is. The Dreamers. Is that DACA?
That is DACA.
Okay, so
Dreamers
that is
are
the
the
same.
yeah, it's the
And
same.
so, and you bring up a lot of people forget why those young people who are now full-fledged adults
Hmm.
um, are part of this whole conversation, and why some people think they don't belong.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they didn't have a choice. I didn't choose my parents. Will, did you choose your parents?
I did not.
Dang.
Exactly.
I
So,
mean,
and that
so
was, if I'm not mistaken, that was put in place during the Obama administration.
yes,
So
yeah, I
that,
do remember that.
yeah, so that
Back
kind
in
of
the
took
golden
place.
age.
Exactly. Wow. Back we missed those. We missed those years.
Back in the sanity age.
Oh,
Yeah.
one of my favorite things I've seen lately is, this is a non sequitur, but
Yeah.
the how the Trump merch is now saying like Trump 2028,
Oh gosh. Yeah. I
some
see that
guy
too.
posted himself wearing an Obama 28
Oh,
hat. And I thought,
why not?
well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right?
Exactly.
And so,
Exactly.
yeah, no, I remember that happened during the Obama
Yeah,
years.
yeah. So
So,
again, for them, it's a big limbo. And during the first Trump administration, they were trying to stop DACA, like
right,
actually like remove that status from those from the people that have it, but it didn't go through. And then this year, this time around, they haven't. As far as I know, they haven't quite tried to yet, but we don't know if they
right.
will. Of course, they kind of started with like the low hanging fruit, which is people
Oh,
that
yeah,
have no status.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's where we are right
The
now.
people that a lot of the country won't care as much about
Right.
as if that was,
Yeah,
some white person getting.
yeah.
That's a politically charged statement I just made. But what the heck? That's why this podcast is here.
And as
So,
I mentioned, yeah, some of my family is no status. So
right,
because of that, I've been able to experience what difference has been for me as it has been for them, which they just work just as hard. They pay taxes and they also contribute to our communities, but they are being left out, right?
yeah,
They don't
yeah,
receive Social Security, and like during the pandemic, for example, they didn't receive that pandemic relief
yeah.
money that was
Hmm.
sent out. They didn't get it, even though they've been part of the community. So a lot of times you hear people say, "Oh, right, the immigrants are taking, taxpayers' monies," but they're not. They're if anything, they're putting money into
Well, and
Social
Yeah,
Security and
they're kind of doing the
Medicare.
a
opposite of.
lot a lot of people
Exactly.
don't realize how much immigrants and immigrant families contribute to their community.
Right.
They see
Well,
them.
hmm.
They may have negative attitudes about them or thoughts, but it's only because they don't know that they are contributing, especially to the tax load. Like you
Exactly.
just look at, so if they're working for a legitimate employer, then they're
Hmm.
paying into Social Security, they're paying into
Yeah.
Medicare and Medicaid, and because they're getting a paycheck just like everybody else. So,
Exactly. So yeah,
um,
and just seeing my family go through a lot of these crises, as well as other people I know in my community, it's really what has pushed me to get involved.
right.
And of course, with the administration as aggressive as they're being towards immigrants, I felt like I was never really into politics. Like we were saying during the Obama administration, I was like, who cares? I'm
Yeah.
not
The
paying
golden
attention.
age.
I'm not paying attention. But now it's like I'm really paying attention, like every day, to what's happening, because especially with this time around, the second time with
Right.
him being in office, we really are getting at new
Oh,
things
yeah. I
every
mean,
day thrown at us.
This is
So
and
this is the time to get
that's,
involved.
yeah,
oh, yeah, it is.
exactly.
And, I know a lot of people are kind of complaining, why aren't more people getting involved? But it's like, they don't understand that this is like a super tanker, right?
Hmm.
And the administration is thrown out so much so fast.
Hmm.
Take away the super tanker analogy, but that's an economic one. But it's hard to keep up with all the changes.
Hmm.
I mean, how many executive orders are we up to now?
Yeah,
Like
Probably in the.
200 and something.
I would have thought in like the thousands.
I don't know.
yeah.
And so but so you kind of touched on this, but you know, how do you see the current administrations? And this is kind of what you just said a moment ago, kind of leads into this question. How do you see the current administration's policies affecting our communities? Particularly immigrant immigrant focused communities, because you know most people don't know that immigrants are everywhere. Like, I just went to upstate New York
Oh yeah.
to deal with some family stuff.
Okay.
And, uh, you know, on that trip, of course, I stopped for gas regularly, and, you know, it's America. We're supposed to be the melting pot, and no surprise that I see all kinds of people,
Hmm.
no matter where I go. And when I grew up in upstate New York,
Hmm.
there were no immigrants. There was, I mean, that it was, and there were no African Americans where I grew up. And this is out in dairy country,
Right. Yeah.
and so, I so how do you see the current administration's policies affecting our communities, that maybe haven't had a lot of immigrant impact in the past
Yeah.
or have been living with it for a long time?
Yeah. So I think that's kind of a good point you're making too. A lot of the times, the people that I have negative views about immigrants are because they hear it on Fox News. First of all, the media pushes that, and second of all, because they don't have exposure to a lot of
Yeah,
different people from they look different than you. So,
right.
but you're not familiar with them, you're not exposed to immigrants. So then you believe what you hear in the media.
Yeah.
But then as they start coming into the communities and they start being part of your community, then you realize, oh, they're just people like you and
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah.
They're just here to
HBs, I
work.
call them human beings.
Yeah. They care about family, they care about their kids having a good education, they just care about paying the bills.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to that. But I think where right now this administration is like really affecting us as immigrants, because not just Latinos, different type of immigrants that are here, is that they're pushing on a lot of things like the 287G government program. So that has existed for a while, but they're pushing on it a lot more
Can,
now.
can you tell us about what that is? Because
Yeah.
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, so that's a program where local enforcement can participate with ICE, or they can sign up on this different types of programs with ICE where they can act and be trained by ICE agents so they can implement that at a local level. So, for example, there's a couple. I'll give you a place here in Georgia. So, like for example, in Hall County, the sheriff's office participates in the jail enforcement model. So that means that if anyone who's in jail, they can actually check their immigration status. So that
Okay.
way, if they don't have the correct paperwork, pretty much, they call ICE and have them pick them up and take them away. So
Recently I heard that it was the sheriff's departments in particular that were really integrating with ICE
it has been some sheriffs,
versus the
yeah.
regular police force in different
Mhm,
communities. Like that the police themselves are resisting
mhm,
being involved with ICE because it gets in the way of them doing their job
yeah. So
because of the negative connotation
mhm,
that ICE has given themselves,
yeah,
and
sure.
so and Trump's use of ICE,
Yeah.
in particular recently. I don't know if that's something that you heard of
So
or
at this point, right, even our county is actually not even signed up for this program, our county in Georgia, but other counties are. And I
okay.
do see when I look at the list, I am looking a lot of sheriff's office, but
Hmm.
however, also like for example, the Georgia Department of Public Safety, and that kind of works throughout Georgia. They're
Right.
signed up. The Georgia Department of Corrections, they're signed
That's
up for the
yeah.
program. So, for example, it's stuff that even though our particular Cherokee County is not signed up for, it can affect us. But yeah, I don't see a lot of the police departments like you mentioned.
Oh yeah,
So,
it could
so
affect
that
you
is
if you
kind of
just
good.
go over to Fulton. I
Yeah.
mean, we live very close to
Yeah.
several county
Yeah.
lines, so
However, for example, I have noticed that the Canton Police Department has stopped labor workers, for example,
hmm.
like down in the area where they stand and wait for the work, and they have asked them to, just move to the side that they shouldn't be there. So whether that's, I don't know what the intent of it is, to maybe harass them or maybe to just have them not be out there in the open. I'm not really sure what the intent is, but they're definitely something that I hadn't noticed before prior to this
Okay.
administration, where they tell
Yeah.
them to move along. You're not allowed to be here. So maybe they are participating, but in a different way. But I
It's,
guess
it's soft interference versus hard interference.
yeah, definitely. But
Yeah.
one headline that, for example, I can tell you about is this one girl. Her name is Jimena Arias Cristobal. She's here in Georgia, and she was detained. So she was actually stopped by a simple traffic stop. Right?
Right.
She took an illegal right turn. Like when it tells you don't turn on red.
I've seen a lot of
Down there.
Caucasians do
Yeah.
that.
So she made an illegal right turn. For that reason, she was stopped,
Right.
and then but she was taken to jail, and
Right.
once in jail because they noticed that she didn't have all her proper documentation, then ICE was called, and then ICE picked her up, and now she is at a immigration detention center here in Georgia. So, and this
Mm.
girl has lived here since she was 4 years old. So
So she's really a
this,
DACA kid.
yeah,
Has
she's
a
this is
similar
all,
status.
yeah, and perhaps and because of the year that she was born, maybe she's not a DACA because some of the
Oh, that's
younger
right. You had
ones,
the cutoff.
yeah, you had a cutoff, so probably she doesn't have DACA that protects her. So, but still, she was
Same
here since she
concept,
was
but the
4. Yeah,
particulars don't. Yeah,
this is
yeah,
her home. You
yeah.
can't just deport a 4-year-old to whatever country she might be from because it's strange. She does her family's not there. You know, this is what she calls home, and making a right turn is not does not make her a criminal like what
Yeah,
they talk about on Fox that
yeah.
oh we're only focusing on
Well, they're
criminals.
really pushing the boundaries of
Hmm.
what the interpretation of it is, and they're
Hmm.
doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
And so, and that's part of what really gets under my skin is the abuse of the law and of the rules that this administration is pushing. And, they're using the immigrant communities as their, focus point. But at what point does that focus shift to a larger group of people,
Yeah.
that aren't just immigrants, but maybe have a different status that they don't like?
Yeah.
And so, it was is it in, I think Congress is trying to pass a law that, or there may already be a law in the books, that states that a simple violation like that cannot be used as a detentionable offense.
Yeah. That should
And
definitely pass.
that is really important. And folks should,
Hmm.
I wish we had the information on that because, um, Pat, are you taking notes? No, that's okay.
We'll have to.
So, that's something that I would like to look up
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
and check out because, um, it's pushing for things like that that's going to make it
Yeah.
so that we can make our communities as a whole safer.
But I think you
You
make,
know?
but a point there that we want to make sure to highlight is that sure at the federal level it's important, but at the local level
Oh
it's
yeah,
also very important. You
yeah.
know, a lot of these things that are happening, these are the things that if we are active in letting our representatives know that this is not what we want for to
Hmm.
happen in our communities. That we're making sure we're going to our local meetings to see where are our funds going. Is this money, is our money going to the 287G?
Right.
Are we actually paying for them to get that training from ICE, or where is it coming from?
Yeah, because let's
Because that's
face.
not what we want our money to be spent on. We want our money to be spent on schools, on fixing the
Oh yeah,
roads,
Hmm.
on
yeah, and I certainly don't
making our
want
community safe.
police training to come from ICE,
Hmm.
given
Oh,
their
no.
recent tendencies. I've been a big fan for a long time of, upping our police training, but in de-escalation techniques, not in escalation techniques.
Exactly.
And this is
Exactly.
all about escalation. It's
Yeah.
not about
Yeah.
de-escalation.
Well, and
So,
that's one thing that I think for everyone, I would say is that we tend to not pay attention a lot to our local politics, right? And how
oh,
our
tell me about it.
laws are.
I'm a retired teacher
Like
from
we
Cherokee
don't
County.
we don't pay
So,
attention. We don't
you
attend a
know,
lot of these local meetings, so we really don't know what's going on until something big happens, or
yeah.
maybe something in our family happens, and then maybe we pay attention. So.
Well, but you also bring up a really good point in that, it's the local action, and I've seen this in some of the news pieces I watch. It's local action that's really making a difference in some cases. And so, I think the more active we can be as citizens of Cherokee County
Yeah.
in protecting all of our citizens, not just, the ones we interact most often with.
Yeah.
And so,
And you probably do interact with a lot of immigrants and just don't realize or don't think about it when you go to your favorite Mexican
right.
restaurant, when you call your landscaper,
Oh,
when the
heck yeah.
pool guy comes over,
Hmm.
Yeah.
when you have, you do a remodeling in your house, it probably
Oh,
is an
yeah. Oh,
immigrant.
no, I've interacted with lots of people
Who
like that.
knows what the status of
Yeah.
them is, legally, but the
Yeah.
fact is that they probably are immigrants, and
Yeah.
in a way we all are. Okay.
And I said the word citizens, and in my mind,
Uh-huh.
I encompass everybody in my community, regardless of where they come from or their status for that
Mhm.
matter, because in my mind, a citizen is someone who lives in a community and helps care for that community and participates in that community
Yeah.
in a positive way. So now there are certain people that like to nitpick that would take umbrage with that, but it's like we said a moment ago, we're all human beings. And, as human beings, we always do best when we work together and not when we work at odds for each other.
Yeah, definitely. So I think with that, I think a lot of it goes, what can we do to support or stand in solidarity? I would say, support Latino owned businesses, shop, eat, and spend locally.
Yeah.
The businesses often, support immigration workers or immigrants. They create a safe space for our community, right?
Yeah.
And we want to be intentional on where we spend our money, right? Avoid businesses that actually back negative, or anti-immigration
Yeah.
laws and stuff like that. And then just show up at rallies, make sure you're communicating with your, like you said, your local representative and letting them know how that you care about immigrants in our community.
Yeah, and those are all, actionable items that I think people really need to keep in. It's like, you bring up a really good point about, the restaurants and the workers and, you know, I don't know anybody that I've never met anybody that interacted negatively with people working in those professions. So, if we as people that live together in these communities, want to do something,
Mhm.
what do you see as the big picture issues moving forward? And, what can folks do to really get involved?
Well, I think, yeah, going back to a little bit of what I said, supporting local businesses,
Right.
being intentional, um, volunteering or donating
Right.
to, offering time, skills, and resources to groups that are doing the work.
Yeah.
With that, I'll bring up, like, for example, we have, because in Cherokee County, the Latino community has grown so much in I don't know, the last few years. I'm not from here, so I don't know how
Oh
long,
no,
but
it's
everyone
grown a
tells
lot.
me it's grown a lot in
I
the
can
last
tell you
few
just from the
years.
classrooms,
So
you know.
from that, one thing that has, come up in the last, starting I think from last year to this year, is now there's a Latino Business Roundtable. So that's, for example, a group that they're going to focus on supporting, connecting, and educating the Latino community in Cherokee County. They're looking for sponsors. So if you're, small business owner or a large business owner and want to,
Mhm.
sponsor the group, that's one way to go.
Okay.
There's the also the Latino business networking, and that one's just networking, but you can come, show up, and like meet, entrepreneurs
Yeah.
that are like-minded and Latinos. And of course, you also have the Latino outreach of the Cherokee County Democrats.
Right.
They're also, out there trying to educate and support. And yes, they're Democrats, but it's not about politics at this moment. It's about just trying to keep the community safe and,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, educated and supported.
Yeah.
So, whichever one of these organizations you want to help, you want to, sponsor or just donate to, that would be a great way to help
Okay.
as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. And I think there's the one thing that I definitely wanted to make sure to touch on is some of the myths about immigrants,
Yeah.
especially because you hear it a lot again in the media, which is, immigrants are criminals. And again, studies have shown
The data does not support.
have shown that both documented and undocumented immigrants are less likely to commit a crime than native born citizens.
Yeah.
Or
Most of
the
them,
president of the United States.
there you go.
Well, there's that, along with several of his minions.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, most of them just want to work, take care of their families. Some send money back to their families, and they just want to live in peace in a community just like we all do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Um, well, Ludi, I cannot say enough how much we've enjoyed having you as our guest tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a privilege.
Yeah, a
thank you.
real
Thank you.
privilege. And
Thank you
like
for
I said
inviting me,
before,
giving me
I
a
definitely
voice.
I definitely learned some stuff. And I hope in the future we can have you back.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
Part 2.
yes, part 2. So thank you very much, everybody.
Be sure to like, share, subscribe, follow all the social media stuff. Do that.
And we'll see you